Gunfire explodes through the cavern. The echoes are deafening, bouncing off the jagged rock walls. Eleanor dives behind an old wooden support beam, heart hammering in her chest. Dust and splinters rain down around her as a bullet rips through the beam an inch from her head. Nokoma crouches low beside a crumbling rock pile, rifle steady in her hands. Nathaniel is on his stomach, half shielded behind an overturned mining cart. The lantern Eleanor had been holding lies shattered on the rocky floor, the flames sputtering out. They are in complete darkness. The only light is from the flicker of torches held by the men hunting them. A voice booms from the shadows.
I was hoping you'd come this far, Mrs. Whitmore. You saved me the trouble of digging up that map myself.
Eleanor grits her teeth, gripping the cold steel of her revolver.
I don't know what you're looking for, Calloway, but I promise you, it's not yours.
Hello chuckle. The sound slithers through the cavern like a snake.
Neither was your husband's life, but he took something from me. And now, you've taken something too. Have a look around. You got nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. So I suggest you stop playing this cat and mouse game and make this easy on yourself. Are you willing to get your friends killed over this?
He is trying to rattle you. Do not let him.
I wasn't planning on it.
She peers through the darkness, trying to count the figures beyond the torchlight. At least 6 men. Too many. Nokoma reloads her rifle in silence, her movements measured and precise. Nathaniel, breath ragged, clutches his side. He's been nicked. A graze across his ribs. Eleanor leans toward him.
Nathaniel, are you okay? Can you move?
I don't have much of a choice, do I?
You think I don't know about the mine, Eleanor? About what your husband and that Blackfoot bastard did? Wow. He really didn't tell you anything, did he?
Eleanor stiffens. Beside her, Nokoma goes still. Calloway's voice drops lower.
James wasn't an innocent man. And Nokoma, neither was your son. You know it. And that's why you're here, isn't it? You need to know, same as she does.
Eleanor swallows hard. Nokoma's fingers tighten on the grip of her rifle. She thinks of James's journal, the map, the secrets buried beneath their feet. And she makes a decision.
Nokoma, the tunnel behind us, how far do you think it goes?
At once, Nokoma glances back, reading the walls, the curve of the cavern.
Far enough, but it won't be an easy run.
Eleanor nods. She turns to Nathaniel.
On my signal, we move. Got it?
Without hesitation, Nathaniel nods once, grimacing. Eleanor takes a breath, then she moves first. She darts into the darkness. They run. The tunnel narrows, forcing them to duck and weave through crumbling wooden beams and jagged stone. Behind them, Calloway's men give chase. The ground shakes beneath their feet, unstable. Eleanor can hear Nokoma muttering under her breath, a prayer or a curse, she can't tell. Nathaniel stumbles, gritting his teeth. Eleanor grabs him, pulling him forward. Then, the tunnel widens, and they burst into a hidden chamber. And there it is. The thing James had been protecting. A wooden chest half buried in rock, a ledger, documents, gold, and something else. A Blackfoot artifact, old and untouched, sitting atop the treasure like a grave marker. Nokoma stares.
This is what James was hiding.
A harsh laugh behind them. They spin. Calloway stands in the tunnel entrance, gun raised.
Do you really think I came all this way for gold? I have all the money and power I want.
His eyes glint.
It was never about the money, woman.
Eleanor tightens her grip on her gun. Nathaniel groans, barely standing. Nokoma's expression is flat.
Your husband wanted to fix a mistake. He wanted to buy his way into redemption, back into my good graces. But I don't give second chances.
He cocks the hammer of his gun. The cavern is suddenly dead silent. Eleanor tightens her grip on her gun, her heartbeat thudding in her ears. The weight of Calloway's words sinks into her bones. James wanted to fix a mistake. The question is, what mistake? Calloway steps forward, boots crunching on loose rock. His gun remains steady, pointed at Eleanor's chest.
Tell me, widow, did James ever tell you about the heist?
Eleanor's stomach knots. She doesn't answer. Calloway's grin widens.
Didn't think so. Well, let me enlighten you.
Nathaniel, still wounded, shifts beside her. He's barely staying upright. Nokoma stands near the wooden chest, eyes locked on Calloway.
James wasn't the man you thought he was. He wasn't some poor rancher trying to make an honest living. He was a thief.
Eleanor's jaw tightens.
You're lying.
Calloway chuckles.
Am I?
He nods toward the chest of gold and ledgers.
That's not some lost fortune, Mrs. Whitmore. That's blood money. Stolen from the worst men the West had to offer. Crooked barons, corrupt lawmen, slavers. James and his crew didn't rob banks or rail cars. They robbed the devils in suits and ties. And you know what? They got away with it.
Eleanor swallows hard. Calloway tilts his head.
Until James grew a conscience and crossed me.
Eleanor's fingers tighten around the handle of her revolver.
He was trying to give it back?
Calloway nods slowly.
That's right. He thought if he buried it here, if he left a trail for someone worthy enough to find it, he could wash the blood off his hands. Your husband was a very dirty man.
He smirks.
Funny thing about blood and dirt, they never wash out, do they?
Nokoma suddenly speaks, her voice low and controlled.
And Tahonis? What happened to him?
Calloway's grin fades slightly. Eleanor glances at Nokoma, noticing for the first time the fire in her eyes. This isn't just about revenge. This is personal. Calloway shrugs.
It depends. You want the version James told or the truth?
Nokoma lifts her rifle an inch higher.
The truth.
Calloway sighs, shaking his head.
James and Tahonis were partners until they weren't. See, James was ready to walk away, to disappear. But Tahonis, he wasn't. He wanted justice. He wanted revenge. And James knew what that meant. It meant more blood.
His eyes flicker with amusement.
So Tahonis did what any desperate man would do. He tried to stop him.
Immediately, Nokoma's expression hardens. Eleanor feels the weight of the air shift.
You're saying James killed him?
Calloway doesn't blink.
I'm saying James thought he did. Even if it was an accident.
A heavy silence. Then, Nokoma steps forward. Her voice is steady, but her hands are trembling.
Tell me where he is.
Calloway smiles darkly.
Why, Nokoma? You planning to tell him the truth? That James wasn't just his friend, that he was his father.
Eleanor's blood turns to ice. She looks at Nokoma, but Nokoma doesn't deny it, because it's true. James Whitmore had a second life, a secret life. Tahonis wasn't just his partner, he was his son. Calloway's smile widens.
Bet that wasn't in his little journal, was it? Speaking of journals, the last time I saw your son, he had one with him, along with a knife in his ribs. Remember at the cabin?
Eleanor's hands begin to shake. Everything she thought she knew about her husband. A lie. Before she can process it, Calloway raises his gun.
Shame you won't live long enough to sort it all out.
Bang! Nathaniel throws himself forward, taking the bullet meant for Eleanor. He crumples to the ground. Eleanor screams. Nokoma fires. Bang! Calloway staggers, blood blossoming across his chest. Another shot, straight through his skull. He falls, dead. His men scatter and flee. The sun rises, casting long golden streaks across the rugged Montana valley. Eleanor and Nokoma stand over the open chest, its contents shimmering in the morning light. Gold bars, coins, ledgers filled with proof of stolen wealth. The weight of what they now know hangs heavy between them. Eleanor kneels beside the chest, running her fingers over the engraved markings on the gold bars.
If we leave it here, someone worse will find it. And we already know what they'll do with it. More evil.
Nokoma doesn't answer right away. She stares out over the valley, jaw tight, arms crossed. The wind pulls at her dark hair, but she stands firm, unmoving. Finally, she lets out a slow breath and speaks.
We take it, but we don't use it like they did.
Eleanor looks up, meeting her gaze. For the first time since they met, there is no hostility between them, a silent understanding. They will carry James's sins, but they will not repeat them. Eleanor exhales, sitting back on her heels. She should feel relief. Instead, there's a weight still crushing her chest. She looks at Nokoma. Really looks at her. The woman James had known before her. The woman James never let go of. The elephant in the room can't be ignored anymore. Eleanor's voice is quiet, but steady.
How long?
Nokoma turns, brows furrowing.
What do you mean, how long?
Eleanor lifts Nokoma's chin.
How long were you with him? Before me?
Silence. Nokoma's gaze darkens slightly, but there's no avoidance, only truth. She tilts her head slightly, watching Eleanor.
Long enough to know him better than you ever did.
The words sting more than Eleanor wants to admit. She swallows, pushing past the ache.
And after he married me?
Nokoma looks away, shifting slightly. That's answer enough. Eleanor closes her eyes for a brief moment. Everything she thought she knew about James was a lie, or at least half of one. She exhales sharply, forcing her emotions down. Because deep down she knows the truth. James Whitmore made his choices, and now they were left to carry the weight of them. Nokoma finally turns back to Eleanor, and for the first time there's something softer in her expression. Not pity, not guilt, just understanding.
I never hated you, widow. You were just part of a story James never finished writing.
I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse.
Then you understand how I felt when he chose you.
That lands harder than Eleanor expects. She looks away, blinking at the horizon, at the endless stretch of land she no longer belongs to.
And Tahonis?
James knew. Maybe not at first, but in the end he knew Tahonis was his son.
Eleanor tightens her jaw, trying to ignore the fresh sting behind her ribs. James knew, and yet he never said a damn word. She lets out a slow, shaky breath. Another silence stretches between them. This time it's not tense. It's final. Eleanor nods once, more to herself than to Nokoma. Then she stands. She looks at the chest one last time before brushing her hands off on her coat.
So, what will you do now?
I go home. My people need more than just hope. They need power, and this money will certainly help.
Well, I'm heading back east. Start fresh, maybe find out who I am outside of James Whitmore's shadow.
Nokoma watches her for a long moment. Then, a slow nod. There is nothing left to say. Eleanor extends her hand. Nokoma hesitates. Then, finally, clasps it firmly. A silent respect. A shared history, as twisted and painful as it was. Then without another word, they part ways. One heading east. One heading west. Two women. Forever changed. And behind them, the map that led them here. Burns in the wind.